welcome or welcome back. If you're returning, hello again. And if you are new here, my name is Dakota. I live in New Jersey where I work as a dietitian at a hospital. In my free time, I love to knit. It brings me so much joy, and that's why this channel exists, so that we can talk about knitting together. Today I have another podcast episode for you. So I have a finished object to talk about, which I'm wearing, and I have 3 works in progress as well as a new cast on included in those WIPs, and then some yarn acquisitions. This past weekend here in the US was 4th of July weekend. It was actually last Thursday, but I took some vacation time, and my fiance Austin and I went up to Niagara Falls, New York to visit my mom. Niagara Falls is about a 6-hour drive from where I live in New Jersey, and the drive was really beautiful. I actually grew up in Pennsylvania, and you have to drive through Pennsylvania to get to New York, well, at least this part of New York. So it was really nice to drive through Pennsylvania, and the greenery is just so beautiful at this time of the year. Driving through the Delaware Water Gap, if you're not familiar, it's just beautiful. Running water and mountains and trees and green. So I very much enjoyed that. I found that I didn't even spend time knitting, especially while we were driving through the mountains. And I wanted to focus on looking at that because where I live right now, it's very urban and I don't get a lot of mountain views, and I love being in nature. So that was really nice. While we were in Niagara Falls, we went to visit the falls, and I haven't been there since I was a child. I don't really remember what it looked like. We were on the New York side, but I could see Canada, and that was the closest I have gotten to Canada. I unfortunately did not bring my passport, and we only had a few days there, so I wasn't able to go visit Canada, but I thought about all the Canadian knitters that I watch. And yeah, that was just really cool to be that close to Canada. So yeah, it was beautiful. We also visited a few different towns in upstate New York. I went to this town called Amherst, New York, and that's right outside of Buffalo. There was a really cute coffee shop. Austin and I went to grab coffee, and then I went to this local yarn store to that area. It's called Have You Any Wool, I believe. Have You Any Wool Yarn Shop, and that's in Amherst, New York. The owner's name is Ben, and he's very nice. It was a tiny little yarn store. I walked in, and there was just a group of local people knitting, and I really wanted to join, so I had parted ways with Austin for a bit, and I stayed at the yarn store while he did his own thing and got some things done. And yeah, it was really nice to just sit in this yarn circle and learn about the locals there. Most of them were a lot older than me, so it was just cool to hear their stories of how they ended up in that area and how they got into knitting. It's funny, Ben, actually, the owner, helps them a lot with knitting. He teaches them a lot, so it was just cool to see everyone learning from each other. I got to teach someone how to do the magic knot, and that was really rewarding, actually. Just to be able to help another knitter. So yeah, it was really cool. If you're ever in that area or the Buffalo area, I would definitely recommend that yarn store. It has a ton of affordable options. They carry my favorite affordable-ish yarn, which is Barocco Ultra Wool DK. They have a bunch of Barocco yarn, and it's like an intermediate price range. It's definitely not like your Michaels level of affordable, but it's intermediate. I think it's about $10 for a ball, and you do get a lot. So yeah, I would just highly recommend checking it out if you're in the area. So other than that, we spent a lot of time outside fishing. I almost caught a fish and it got away, unfortunately, but it was cool to see Austin catch some fish, and overall it was just very pleasant to be able to bring my knitting with me anywhere we went and sit down and spend some time on the needles. I will conclude that portion of the video recapping my trip and let's just move into my finished objects because I have quite a lot to talk about today. The first finished object is what I'm wearing. It is my finished Eva cardigan, the pattern designed by Petite Knit. I was really dumb and I did not take any notes on this project, but if I had to estimate, I think it's been on the needles for about 2 months. It is a sweater, or categorized as a sweater or cardigan. You can wear it open or closed. It's knit with a DK weight yarn. I went with the suggested yarn, which is the Satisgarn Pure Gint, and I decided to go with the same shade that of navy that she knitted her sample in. The gauge for this pattern is 20 stitches and 30 rows. The suggested needle size is a 4mm needle for the body and then a 3.5mm needle for the cuffs and the hem and the button band. The sizing for this pattern ranges from an extra small to a 5XL, which is designed to fit a bust circumference ranging from 75 centimeters all the way to 150 centimeters. So I think it is quite size inclusive. The pattern is intended to have about 26 centimeters of positive ease or 10¼ inches. So the pattern does state that as you size up, the less positive ease there. So that's something to keep in mind. This pattern is worked top down. First you cast on at the back of the neck, and then you do these really beautiful rapid increases to shape the rear deltoid area. And then you will go and knit these front panels on the right and left side. So it kind of reminds me of a saddle shoulder, but I don't know the exact naming of what technique this is. I've heard it said in some other YouTube videos, but I personally don't know what it's called. It just reminds me of a saddle shoulder, and I know that Petite Knit uses this technique in some of her other patterns. I think the Poppy Tee is one of them. But after you knit these front panels, you end up doing these increases to shape the sleeve. So it creates this beautiful set-in sleeve, contiguous set-in sleeve, very minimal ends to weave in, which I really appreciate. And then after you finish doing the increases for the sleeve, at the same time you're also working these beautiful raglan increases on the back of the back yoke. I'll try to insert some footage of me wearing it and showing you the details, but eventually you will split for sleeves and then you will just do the continue working flat in the body. You will be doing increases along the front panels just to shape the button band and create this nice V-neck shaping. And then, yeah, you'll just eventually reach the bottom of the body, and then you'll do your ribbing and do your sleeves and then do your button band. So the cast off for this pattern, she says to just cast off in pattern. And that's what I did for the hem and for the button band. But for the sleeves, I decided to do a Italian bind off, or I think it's tubular bind off. I honestly get confused still between the two, but I'm pretty sure it's called the tubular bind off. I did 2 rows of double knitting for the sleeves and then did my tubular bind off. I think I mentioned in a past podcast that I was worried about how the length would turn out because really there is not much length between the bottom of the sleeve and when you have to start the ribbing. I thought it looked quite cropped, but once I tried it on, I could envision that it was gonna fit nicely. I didn't want it to be super long. I didn't want it super cropped either, but I just went with the measurements that the pattern told me and it ended up working out perfectly. One thing I really love about this pattern is the long ribbing. If I'm not mistaken, I think it's 3 to 3.5 inches of ribbing for the hem and the cuffs. I love how it just accentuates the mundane part of a sweater. Like I don't know, the ribbing on a sweater is not something that I typically would notice when it's like a short ribbing, if that makes sense. There's just something about the long ribbing that is really flattering and I think adds so much personality to this cardigan. Another really different design element that I have not seen in many knitted cardigans or patterns out there is the 2x2 knit button band. Oftentimes I'll see like a 1x1 rib or the double knit button band, and I did think about doing a double knit button band, but I don't know, I was like, I think it would look weird with the really long ribbing on the hem and the cuffs of the sleeves, so I stuck with the pattern and I did the 2x2 ribbing all along the button band, and I was playing a very close game of yarn chicken. I ended up shortening the width of the button band. It's actually supposed to be wider, I think by 1/2 inch, but I was worried that I was gonna run out of yarn, so I ended up shortening it, and I think it looks fine. It's still nice and wide. I think no one would be able to tell unless you have knit this pattern or read the pattern. You wouldn't know. Also, I just want to apologize that there's like construction happening outside and I hear like the trucks beeping. Hopefully the camera is not picking it up, but if it's distracting, I'm sorry. Anyway, so with my button band, I think I picked up too many stitches along the back of the neck, unfortunately. It puckers out and like sticks out quite a bit in the back. I don't know if it's the way I blocked it or if it's just too many stitches that I picked up. Along the front sides, it's fine. There's no rippling, there's no puckering. It sits great. But for some reason on the back of the neck, it's just a little too wide. I have tiny shoulders and a small neck, so I don't know if it's just my measurements that are causing it to be like that, but I just, in the past when I've knit cardigans and I was less experienced as a knitter, I found that when I would go along with the pattern and the stitch pickup rate that the pattern suggested, my button band would always end up being way too short, or it would like cinch in, and it just clearly wasn't enough stitches that I needed to pick up to where like the button band just wouldn't fall nice and flat. I think it could have to do with the fact that maybe my row gauge could be off, maybe my stitch gauge was fine, but the row gauge might have not been fine. I'm not sure. I did not check my gauge for this at first, like I didn't knit a gauge swatch, but as I got further along on the body, I did check my gauge and it met gauge, but that could have changed as I went with the pattern. Sometimes like I'll end up having a much tighter gauge at the beginning of a pattern, and then, you know, as my hands get tired and I put it down and pick it back up, my gauge kind of gets looser, so that could be why too. I'm not sure, but regardless, I'm still gonna wear it. Maybe in the future I can go back and fix it, but it's not something that very much bothers me right now. I can still, like, if I just make it a little wider, I guess it sits flat, but it's not something that bothers me tremendously. As you'll notice, I don't have buttons on it yet. I do have my stitch markers still hanging out where my buttonholes are, just so I can have an easier time placing my buttons. I've been looking online for buttons and I still haven't found ones that I'm super satisfied with. I think I'm gonna go to my local yarn store sometime soon and check out what buttons they have there, because it's really hard to visualize online what I would want for this. I would love to hear your opinions in the comments, what you would choose for this cardigan. Would you go with a like black button, a dark brown, even like a honey caramel brown might look really cool with this? I'm not sure. Right now I'm kind of leaning just towards like a dark brown, but honestly, like I don't know the name of the color, but I'm envisioning like a honey coffee caramelly brown might look really cool with this too. So, oh, almost like the color of my belt. I don't know. Would it clash too much, or would it look nice? Would you go with a dark brown? Let me know in the comments what you would choose for this. I'm very curious, and it would help me actually a lot when I go to look for buttons or as I shop online for buttons. All in all, I really enjoyed knitting this cardigan. I'm gonna get a lot of wear out of this fall and winter season. I wish that I could wear it now more, but it's just extremely hot outside, and even sitting here, I had just had the AC running before I started filming, and it's already getting pretty warm. So yeah, unfortunately, I don't think I'll be getting much wear out of it this summer, but I'm excited to have it ready for the fall. If you're considering knitting this pattern, I would recommend it. I would say it's definitely not beginner friendly. Maybe if you're intermediate or you're just wanting to try a more difficult pattern, give it a go. Knitting flat in the body was not my favorite. Purling really like hurts my hands. And I knit continental style, and purl continental style, so yeah, it was just a lot of purling, which I didn't love, but I really love the finished product, so it's okay. The suffering was worth it. And yeah, the yarn, I will say it is not the most soft yarn. It's fine sitting next to skin, I'm totally fine, but it's definitely toothy. You can feel it, it's very gritty. So just keep that in mind if you're sensitive to wool. Maybe try a softer yarn. I did have Austin try this on just because I was curious how it would look on him. For reference, we're the same height, we're 5'6". He just has a much longer torso than I do and very much broader shoulders than I do. But it looked really nice on him, and I think that's something to note because I noticed that like the V-neck shaping and the 2x2 rib button band, it just creates like this really nice masculine finish. Obviously it would look wonderful on anyone, but I don't know, there was just something about it where I was like, I could see him wearing something like this. So that's just something I want to keep in mind in the future, or if you have a guy in your life that you want to knit a cardigan. As far as I know, there's no male version of this pattern, but I think you could just knit the right size and it would still look nice. That's all I have to say about this pattern. If you have any questions about this pattern, feel free to leave it in the comments and I'll do my best to answer it. Let's move on to my works in progress. So my first work in progress that I'm going to talk about is my Florence Tank by Soren Nordland. I have made quite a lot of progress on this. I think the last time I spoke about it, I was just like a few inches into the body. So let me show you what I have so far. This is the back. It's kind of hard to see because it is a bottom-up tank top, but this is the body. And right now I have finished the left front and I'm just working on my shoulder strap now. So since the last video, I have finished the main body of the not cardigan. It is like a cardigan style tank top. It's buttoned in the front, so I don't know, what is this even categorized? So this is categorized as a sleeveless top, but it's kind of cardigan style because it buttons in the front. But yes, I have finished the body and I have bound off for the armhole openings. As you can see here, you can start to see the shaping of the armhole. And I have worked my way up, doing my decreases along the front, doing the shaping of the front, and now I have gotten to the strap. So thoughts and updates on this cardigan, or I keep calling it a cardigan, on this tank top. So knitting through the body was definitely time consuming. It was kind of monotonous, but it was still very engaging. I personally really like doing lace. I find it very engaging. The only downside is that knitting lace flat in the body, there's a lot of room to mess up, and when you mess up one time, you may mess up the whole thing. If there's one error, it might affect the whole pattern. I definitely have errors in here, but personally I cannot tell where they are, and unless Sorry Nordland was looking at this, I don't think that anyone would be able to tell where the mistakes are. But what would end up happening was that maybe I would forget a yarn over, or I would forget to do like knit two together or purl two together, and I would notice that my stitch count was off by the time I reached the end of the row. How I would fix that was I would just do an increase on my way back across, or I would count my stitches, and then if it was just like somewhere that I missed a step, I would just knit back across in the way the pattern told me to, and it ended up being fine. Yeah, I really don't think that anyone is going to be able to tell where the mistakes are. Part I did not enjoy about this was after you bind off for the armholes, you have to start doing your decreases to shape the front left side. So I didn't enjoy this because the lace pattern will change as you do your decreases, and Sorry Nordland does provide support on how to figure out where you are in the lace pattern. There are links that you can follow, but it was just too confusing. I was getting confused. You have to kind of create a new chart of how you're gonna do the lace pattern, and I was just becoming way too confused. So I just used my creative brain and I did it as I thought it should look, and by no means is it perfect, but I think it's good enough. And I think that no one's going to be able to tell unless you have looked at this pattern with a magnifying glass. You probably won't be able to tell. So yeah, that was really the only part that I was really not enjoying at all. But I really like how it turned out. I love the shaping of the button band and how it curves in. I love the double knit button band. I love that it's built into this pattern. I will say that although this is a more complicated and involved pattern, I think Sorry Nordland does a really wonderful job of making it as minimal as possible. So you have your double knit button band included in it. You don't have to go back and do the double knit button band afterwards. She includes this beautiful I-cord edging on the side of the armholes, so you don't have to go back and do it at the end. So I really, really enjoy that. I'm having a hard time envisioning how this is all going to come together. I have knit one other bottom-up cardigan before, and it did not turn out very nice. I didn't like how it turned out at all, actually. So I'm curious to know how this will fit. For reference, I'm knitting the size 2, and I am using Juniper Moon Farms Zoe in the color Cumin, which is this really pretty beige. I only had 2 skeins of this, so I think that it's going to be enough. I knit the whole body basically using only 1 skein. Let me see, you can actually see where I joined in the other ball right here. So up until that point I used an entire skein, which is pretty good. I think I don't have the tag with me, but you get quite a lot of yarn in this. I had originally said that I was gonna knit a plain yoke tee, and I got a comment on a previous video saying like how would I meet gauge for the plain yoke tee, because I think this is DK weight and the plain yoke tee is worsted weight, and I probably would have just changed my needle size, but I blame Nora Knits because I think I said this in my last podcast. I saw that she was knitting this tank top, and I had remembered that I saw it in the past and really wanted to knit it, and as soon as I saw that she was knitting it, I was like, I need to knit it, and I have the yarn. So I changed plans. It was kind of impulsive and reckless of me, but I ended up casting this on, and I'm really, really happy with how it is turning out. The lace pattern is just so beautiful and I'm really happy with it. So that's all the progress I have on my Florence Tank. So next, I just want to give a quick update on my Gestaltung sweater, which I'm making for my friend. This was the sweater that I brought with me on my trip to knit. I have got some progress on it. I still can't believe that I have not split for sleeves on this thing. I think what's deceiving me is that I'm knitting a size up from what I knit my Gestaltung sweater, and so I have to reach a higher stitch count for this, and I think that's just deceiving me a little bit. Like, when am I gonna reach the stitch count to be able to split for sleeves? It's just taking a while, but it's just stockinette in the round, so it's really not that bad. This is what I knit when my hands are tired from doing lace, or I just want something mindless, and yeah, it's going. I wish that I could knit it faster just because I want to give it to her as soon as possible, but I really don't think that she'll be wearing this summer anyway. It's knit with superwash wool, and even though it's superwash, it's still wool, so I think it's just a little too hot to be wearing this. But something interesting to note is that I've been doing my raglan stitches, or my make one right and make one left, wrong this whole time for the entirety of my knitting journey. So I had watched a tutorial back in the day of how to do make one right and make one left, and I thought that when you're doing make one right, you're knitting through the back loop, and when you're doing make one left, you're knitting through the front loop. But it's opposite, because when I was watching a Stephen West tutorial on the project I'm going to talk about next, and he did it opposite. So I was like, oh my gosh, have I been doing this wrong the whole time? I think, the stitches still look really nice. I noticed that there's little bumps next to the raglan stitches, but I don't know, I just always thought that that was normal, and we'll see. I just started doing them the other way, and we'll see if it changes the look of the raglan stitches, but I don't know. I've been doing it this way the whole time, and I never thought it looked ugly or looked wrong, so I'm not gonna go back and change it, but I just thought that that was really kind of funny that I've been doing it wrong this whole time. How do you do it? Leave it in the comments, or please leave a tutorial in the comments that you followed on how to learn how to do make one right and make one left, because now I'm just utterly confused as to which way is the right way. I'm pretty sure the way that Stephen West did it is right, because when I actually looked at the stitches, they were leaning towards the left or the right. So yeah, that's just a big loss. Kind of embarrassing, but also kind of funny that I've been knitting for 2 years now, and I just realized that I've been doing my make one increases wrong. So you're never too far along to learn and you're never too far along to make mistakes. So that's my update on my gift knit for my friend. So my next WIP is actually a new cast on as well as an acquisition. So first, let me show you what I have. So this is the Boneyard Shawl. It's a pattern designed by Stephen West. It's this beautiful long shawl that is knit with stockinette stitches in between these really pretty purl bumps that separate the stockinette stitches. It features a really pretty garter stitch border, and then when you get to the very end of the shawl, you'll do a really pretty thick garter stitch edge. So yeah, this is knit top down, so you only start by casting on 3 stitches and then you build from there. If you're interested, this is a free pattern on Ravelry, and I really like it. How this came to be was that I bought this yarn at the yarn store in New York. So this yarn is the Alpaca Yarn Company Classic Tweed. It's 85% baby alpaca, 15% dongle or dungle. I'm not exactly sure how to say that. It's a DK weight yarn, and you get 110 yards in this little 50-gram ball. The color that I chose is the color Loch Ness, which I think is really cute. And it's this piney green, borderline teal color. I've never knit with a color like this, maybe something similar, but this is definitely on the like more teal side while still maintaining like a piney green feel to it. The Tweety bits are tan and brown and cream, and I just think it's so pretty. This yarn is so soft and squishy. And the reason I chose to do a shawl is because this yarn, there's only 110 grams per ball. So realistically, if I wanted to make a whole sweater out of it, I would need to buy like 10, probably 12 balls of yarn. And I had wanted to buy a different yarn too, so I couldn't spend my whole budget just on this yarn, but I wanted to get enough to be able to make something substantial. I wasn't really feeling the like mittens and beanie type of thing. I was thinking maybe a scarf or a vest, but I didn't want to run out of yarn if I did a vest. So I personally have never knit a shawl. I'm not a shawl person. I associate shawls with like the really big, vibrant, colorful shawls that are multicolor, and it's just not my thing right now, at least this far in my knitting journey. I stick to more plain colors. I like tonals and light variation and marling, but I don't like a bunch of color so far at this point. So I was just like, I want to knit a shawl, I think, but I want something basic. So I stumbled across this shawl. I also saw the grain shawl by Tin Can Knits. I saw this other pattern that wasn't really a pattern. It was just like a fishbone diagram type of thing of, hey, I knit this shawl and this is what I did, but it's not an official pattern. And because I've never knit a shawl before, I really needed something with structure and direction. So it was between this and the grain shawl, and this is what I chose. So I just casted this on yesterday, and it's flying by. Granted, this is going to be a huge shawl, and I think I'm going to get so much wear out of this winter. And yeah, I can already tell that this is going to have a beautiful drape to it. I love how the stitches are working up. I love the center of this shawl, how it has just that single stitch that separates both sides from one another. I hope you can see. I'm sure once it's blocked too, you'll be able to see more, but you have the option with this pattern to do either like little eyelets on each side of the center stitch, or you can do make one right and make one left. So I chose to do the make one right and make one left. I just didn't want the eyelet option, but that is there if you prefer that. So yeah, if you have a DK weight yarn and you don't know what to do with it, the pattern calls for about 600 yards of yarn, and that's approximately what I have. So it just fit all the boxes, and that's how this cast on came to be. So yeah, not much to say so far. I am really enjoying this pattern. I like that there's that purl bump that separates the stockinette, because doing purling across can get exhausting, as you probably know by now. That purling across is not my favorite, but I like that you get that little break, and I just really am enjoying watching this pattern grow. And yeah, I can't wait to have it as a finished object. I'm trying not to just like solely work on this because it's tempting, but like I know once it's finished, if I finish it in a month, I'm not going to be able to wear it. So the impulsive side of me might just finish this super fast. I don't know. But yeah, regardless, I'm really enjoying this, and that's all I have to say so far about it. So this is my Boneyard Shawl by Stephen West. I also wanted to mention with that pattern, there's video support on YouTube, and that was so helpful. I didn't even have to look at the pattern, I just followed the YouTube tutorial. Well, moving on to yarn acquisitions. While I was in New York at the Have You Any Wool yarn shop, I picked up some new yarn, and I already mentioned this alpaca yarn. I got 5 skeins in total of it, and it's just wonderful. As soon as I touched it, I was like, Austin, come look, I have to have this yarn. And I never heard of this yarn company before, so it kind of makes me want to check out some of their other yarn. It's manufactured in Peru. I'm not sure where it's dyed, but, or maybe it is dyed in Peru, I'm not sure. But yeah, this is the Alpaca Yarn Company alpaca tweed. So the other yarn that I bought is this beautiful brown. This is by a company called Brown Sheep Company. It is spun and dyed in Nebraska, so it's made in the US. The type of yarn is called Nature Spun, and it's a worsted weight yarn. You get 245 yards per 100 gram ball, and the gauge is 5 stitches per inch. I got mine in the color Stone, which is this really pretty, cool toned heathered brown. I would say it's like a medium brown. So I got this yarn with the intention of making a zipper sweater. The zipper sweater is a pattern that I have been wanting to make since I started knitting, and I just never felt like I had acquired enough skills to be able to knit the zipper sweater that I wanted. I wanted to wait until I knew that the gauge would be good, that there would be minimal mistakes, hopefully. So, and now I feel like I'm at that point where I'm ready to take it on. So I got this yarn thinking about the zipper sweater. And this is a worsted weight yarn, but the pattern calls for an Aran weight, and I didn't realize that. So I unfortunately didn't get a mohair with it, but at the same time I don't really want to knit it with a mohair. Nothing against mohair, I do like mohair, but I just was not wanting that fuzzy halo to this for some reason. That's not what I'm envisioning. So I held off, and I've been searching online, and I ended up purchasing the Sadness-Garn alpaca yarn. It's a lace weight yarn, and it's made to be a complementary yarn. So you hold it with another strand of yarn, and it's made to complement it. So I still haven't received it in the mail, but I got the color Acorn, and I think that they're gonna pair really nicely together. It's probably gonna create a slight marling, which I'm very happy about. I'm envisioning that, and that makes me very happy. So I'm definitely going to do a gauge swatch, and hopefully by next podcast episode I'll have a little sample for you, but I'm super excited about this. I got 5 balls of this. So altogether I have just over 1,200 yards, which will definitely be enough to buy make at least a size small. I think petite knits patterns are always very large on me, so I definitely have enough to knit the size small, and probably have a little left over. This yarn is pretty affordable. It's intermediate price. I would say it's $13.50 a ball, but you do get 245 yards of it. So altogether I think I spent about $67 on this yarn. I can't remember what I paid for the alpaca, but I think altogether it's gonna be about $100 for this sweater, which is a lot, but it's 100% wool and alpaca, so it's worth it to me, and I'm so excited to try this yarn. It definitely feels gritty, it feels toothy, there's a lot of texture to it, but I'm hoping that the lace weight alpaca will soften it up a little bit. If you've ever knit with this yarn, let me know what you thought about it. I'm gonna have to go and do some research into this company and see what they have to offer. So that's all I have today as far as my WIP updates and knitting progress so far. Until next time, I hope you're having a wonderful summer and happy knitting.